there are nights when you lie there and hear the ticking of the clock like a hammer striking the empty space inside your soul. Each second hand jumps forward, and another worry rises up, like ghosts crawling out of the dark corners of the room, slowly moving toward your bed. You close your eyes, but your mind opens wide, like a door leading into uncertainty. And there, you begin to whisper prayers you are not even sure are going anywhere, or if they are only hitting the ceiling and falling back onto your pillow. This feeling is not ordinary loneliness. It is a deep spiritual solitude, the kind where you feel as if you are standing before a tall, cold stone wall called the silence of God. You call out, but there is no answer. You knock, but it seems no one is home, or perhaps someone is there and has chosen not to speak. This is the moment when your faith is tested to its limits, not by loud storms outside, but by the absolute stillness within. But I want you to take a deep breath and let me tell you a truth you may have forgotten in the middle of this storm of silence. A silence never means abandonment. In fact, silence is sometimes the strongest form of presence, the deepest expression of a love that surrounds you without needing words to explain or defend itself. Night has a strange power. It strips away the distractions of daylight and forces us to face ourselves. When the sun goes down and the world grows quiet, the noise inside our hearts begins to scream louder than ever. You start counting your failures. You remember promises you never fulfilled. You ask yourself why your life has ended up in so many dead ends. There is a suffocating feeling when you wait for a sign, for a guiding light, but receive only thick darkness in return. You look at your phone, hoping for a message, but it stays silent. You look toward the future and see only gray. This silence makes you feel small and meaningless, like a grain of sand blown by the wind across a vast desert with no footprints. We often believe God is present only in dramatic miracles or sweet words of comfort we read somewhere. But the truth is, most of our lives are shaped in the long quiet spaces between major events. These are seasons of waiting, when you do not even know what you are waiting for. And it is in these moments that the feeling of abandonment begins to eat away at faith, little by little, like termites hollowing out a solid wooden pillar. Imagine walking through a forest at night. You cannot see the way out, but you know your guide is walking right behind you, even though they say nothing. The guide's silence does not mean they are lost or that they have left you. It means they are watching every step you take, making sure you do not fall into a hidden pit. The spiritual life works the same way. When God is silent, it is often because He is working at the deepest levels of your soul, places your eyes cannot see and your ears cannot hear. Silence is a sacred space where our noisy ego must die so that a higher understanding can be born. We want immediate answers because we fear uncertainty. But sometimes the answer is learning how to remain inside uncertainty without losing hope. The stillness of the night is not a black hole that swallows everything. It is a veil hiding a greater plan, being woven slowly with threads of patience and absolute trust. Lying in silence at 3 a.m. is a deeply personal experience. It can make even the strongest person tremble. You hear your own heartbeat, and each beat seems to ask a question: am I on the right path, or has everything I believed in been an illusion? This silence is not like an empty room. It is heavy, as if someone is standing right beside you but choosing to hold their breath. You search your memory for scripture or encouraging words, but they feel distant and dry compared to the pain you are living through. You feel like a child lost in a supermarket, calling out for your father again and again, but never seeing him appear. The greatest fear is not pain itself. It is the feeling that your pain is unseen and your sacrifices are unnoticed. But hear this clearly, it is in that deepest silence that God is closest to you. He does not need to speak to prove that He is there. We live in a world of noise and instant feedback, and we have lost the ability to endure silence. We need notifications, praise from others, and visible results to feel alive. When God does not respond the way we want, we quickly conclude that He is absent or that He does not care. But look at nature. A seed must lie hidden in dark soil for a long time before it can sprout. Stars appear only when the sky is at its darkest. Silence is the environment where the greatest transformations of human life take place. Without these silent nights, we would remain shallow, forever chasing surface-level emotions. Silence forces us to dig deep and find a faith that does not depend on circumstances or passing feelings. Sometimes God's silence is an invitation to stop talking and begin listening with a different kind of hearing, not with the ears, but with the heart. We often pray as if we are reading a shopping list or giving orders. When we do not receive what we want, we become offended. Silence is how God teaches us true relationship, not based on exchange or benefit, but on union. In the darkness, when everything becomes unclear, you are left with only one thing: your pure presence before the Creator. No degrees, no possessions, no reputation can help you here. You stand exposed and weak. And it is precisely in that weakness that God's strength begins to reveal itself. Silence is not punishment. It is purification, removing the impurities from our love for Him. Think about sitting beside someone you truly love. No words are needed, yet the connection is deep and real. That is the kind of silence God wants to share with you. He wants you to know that even if He does not change your circumstances right away, He is still there, suffering with you and walking with you through the darkness. His silence is a quiet embrace, one we often miss because we are too busy searching for explanations. Do not try to break the silence with complaints or logic. The human mind is too small to understand eternal mysteries. Let yourself sink into the stillness. Let the night do its work, stripping away the masks you wore all day. In the next part, we will look at great lives in the history of faith, people who endured long years of terrifying divine silence. You will see that you are not alone on this road. Those most deeply loved by God often pass through the darkest nights of the soul. From Job in the ashes, to David in the cave, to Elijah under the tree in the desert, all of them cried out, asking where God was. The answer they received was not a satisfying explanation for their suffering, but a revelation of God's unshakable presence and power. God's silence is not a period. It is a comma, preparing you for a greater chapter ahead. So if tonight you still do not see the light, rest in peace. He is still watching over your sleep in the boundless silence of His love. Sometimes we fear silence because it acts like a mirror, reflecting the emptiness we try to fill with work and shallow relationships. When God is silent, He removes the false crutches we lean on, forcing us to stand on the legs of real faith. Faith is not believing everything will go our way. Faith is believing that God is still God even when everything seems to fall apart. Night deceives the senses, but it sharpens the vision of the soul. If you can be at peace in His silence, you will be at peace in any storm. Do not rush to escape the night. Some treasures exist only in darkness, and some lessons can be learned only when all external noise fades away. Let this silence cover you like a warm blanket. God is not far away. He is right here, in the very silence you fear. God's silence is, in truth, a profound respect for human freedom. He does not want to force belief through obvious miracles. He wants us to choose Him for who He is, not for the gifts He gives. When you continue to trust Him without hearing His voice, your faith becomes pure, like gold tested by fire. This night will pass. Dawn will come. What matters is who you become after walking through the darkness. You will become deeper, more compassionate, and more grateful for quiet presence than for loud words. Rest now, tired soul. God's silence is the confirmation that His work is complete, and now He is resting beside you, waiting for a new beginning. Do not fear silence. It is the language of eternity, where words become unnecessary before the glory of God. Imagine a mother gently rocking her baby to sleep. When the child finally drifts into deep rest, the mother stops singing. Yet she does not leave. She remains seated beside the crib, watching every breath her child takes. Her silence is not abandonment, and it is not a loss of love. Her silence is necessary so the child can rest fully and safely. This is how God is looking at you in this dark night. He knows you are exhausted. He knows you are hurting. That is why He remains silent, so you are not distracted by instructions or demands. He wants you to know only one thing: He is there, and His presence is enough. This silence is a safe space where you can lay down every burden and every fear without being judged. Do not try to understand God with your mind. Feel Him with your whole being. In the absolute stillness of the night, you will realize that you were never abandoned, not even for a single moment. Perhaps the reason God's silence feels so frightening is because we have learned to connect communication with sound. But in the spiritual world, the deepest communication often happens in silence. It is a conversation from soul to soul, where all language barriers disappear. When you feel that God is silent, He may actually be inviting you into a higher form of communion, a place where you do not need to speak, and He does not need to speak, because both of you are united in love. This silence is a rare gift, one that not everyone can recognize or value. It is like a pearl hidden inside a rough shell of pain and loneliness. If you are patient enough to peel away that shell, you will discover a peace that this world cannot give and cannot take away. So allow the night to surround you. Allow the silence to remain if it is His will. Do not fight it. Do not try to fill it with artificial noise. Welcome silence like an old friend and a wise teacher. Within it, you will hear the whisper of hope. You will feel the strength of life rising from within. God is never absent. He is your breath and the beating of your heart. Even when you feel as though you are walking through the shadow of death, His rod and His staff are comforting you in quiet ways. Trust that after this night, you will wake with new eyes, a new heart, and renewed strength to continue your journey, firmly convinced that God is always with you, whether He speaks or not. His silence is a sure promise of a presence that never fades and a love that never changes. The silence of God is not an empty void or a pit of forgetfulness. It is a special language, one that only souls who have passed through enough pain can fully understand. We often measure love by visible actions or gentle words, but the love of the Creator goes far beyond our limited human definitions. Imagine a sculptor carving a statue from a rough, stubborn block of stone. Throughout the process, the sculptor may say nothing to the stone. Yet every strike of the hammer and every careful cut is filled with intense focus and deep love for the masterpiece that is yet to be revealed. The stone may feel pain as pieces are removed. It may interpret the sculptor's silence as cold indifference. But in truth, the sculptor is giving everything to transform it into something beautiful. You are that stone in God's hands. The silent seasons you are living through are the moments when He is working most carefully on your soul, removing what is unnecessary, correcting harmful habits, and breaking worldly attachments that prevent you from revealing your true beauty. When you stand in an empty room and cry out without hearing an answer, God is teaching you pure faith. Faith is not believing only what we see or hear. Faith is trusting what we cannot see, yet know with certainty is real. If God always answered immediately and always gave visible signs whenever we asked, our faith would remain childish, dependent on constant rewards. He wants you to grow. He wants your faith to be solid like rock, unmoved by changing emotions or unstable circumstances. Silence is the best environment for that kind of faith to grow roots deep into the soil. In silence, you are forced to face yourself. You are forced to find deeper reasons to keep believing, rather than relying on surface-level comfort. It is a lonely journey, but it is a necessary one if you are to reach the deepest truth of your relationship with the Most High. We must also recognize that sometimes God's silence is an act of profound respect for human freedom. He has given us free will, and He never wants to control us like puppets. When you face difficult choices and feel that God is not guiding you clearly, it may be because He trusts the wisdom and maturity He has already placed within you. He wants you to walk on your own and take responsibility for your decisions, because only through that process can you truly grow. This silence is not neglect. It is the encouraging nod of a father watching from a distance as his child takes their first steps. He is ready to catch you if you fall, but He will not walk in your place. This is a form of love we often overlook, because we want absolute certainty and detailed instructions for every step. But God knows that without independence and lived experience, we would never understand the true value of grace and salvation. Beyond that, Silence is also how God purifies our motives. Do we seek Him for who He is, or only for what He can give us? If we pray only when we need something, and feel God's presence only when life goes smoothly, then our love is nothing more than a transaction. Prolonged silence is a harsh but deeply human test that filters out those impurities. When you pray endlessly and see nothing change, when you pour out your tears and receive only the stillness of the dark night, you are being asked the most important question of your life: do you still love Him when it seems He gives you nothing at all? If your answer is yes, then you have reached the highest level of the spiritual life, where love is unconditional and without barriers. This is the love of saints and great souls who walked through the dark night of faith and emerged into the light of complete union with God. In the deep stillness of the soul, we begin to realize that God's silence is actually an invitation into a mysterious communion. This is the moment when the soul stops chasing God's gifts and starts seeking the God of the gifts. There is a profound difference between loving God for what He gives and loving God for who He is. Silence is the sharpest tool for purifying our love from the impurities of self-interest. When you keep kneeling, keep serving, and keep hoping even when heaven seems shut, that is when your love reaches its purest form. This is the love of the saints, those who walked through the dark night of faith with absolute trust. They understood that God is present even in the emotional absence we feel from Him. In this season, silence is no longer a wall that separates. It becomes a bridge linking the finite to the infinite. It teaches us that God's presence does not depend on our emotions or on what our senses can perceive. He is present because He is the Eternal One. And His silence is one way He honors human freedom. He does not want to force us with obvious miracles or thunderous declarations that shake the earth. He wants us to come freely, with the freedom of a heart that knows how to listen to the gentle whispers of conscience. Persevering through silence also gives us unmatched inner strength. When a person learns to live in peace with God's silence, that person no longer trembles before the changes of the world. The storms of life and the criticism of others cannot shake a soul that has found its foundation in sacred stillness. Silence teaches us to see the world through the eyes of eternity rather than the eyes of time. We begin to understand that today's suffering is temporary, and that the trials we face are valuable lessons that train the will. God uses silence to teach us complete surrender. Surrender is not giving up or quitting. It is an active act of the will, when we place our life into the hands of one who is wiser than we are. In that silence, we learn to release our hunger for control. We learn to trust that a providential hand is guiding all things along the most perfect path for our salvation. God's silence is like the darkness that covers a seed as it sprouts under the soil. Without that darkness, without the quiet of the earth, the seed could never break its hard shell and rise toward the sun. The most important transformation always happens in the most hidden and quiet place. And God's silence is also a lesson in compassion toward others. When we taste the experience of waiting under a silent heaven, we become more able to understand the pain and loneliness of people around us. We realize each person carries a private inner battle, and each one longs for comfort in some form. Silence teaches us how to listen not only with our ears, but with the heart. We become instruments of peace when we bring the stillness we received from God into our daily relationships. Instead of answering harsh words with anger, we learn to be silent in love, and silent in forgiveness. God's silence transforms us into peacemakers, because we understand that loud words often create division, while sincere silence has the power to heal the deepest wounds. God is using His silence to write a meaningful script for your life, where every low note of quietness makes the high notes of joy and grace shine brighter. Never rush to conclude that God has forgotten you. Remember that a teacher stays silent while students are taking an exam. The teacher is silent not because they do not care, but because they are watching with full confidence that the student will complete the test well. In the flow of salvation history, we see that the greatest moments are often prepared by long seasons of silence. Abraham waited for decades in the silence of promise before Isaac was born. Israel endured 400 years of silence in Egypt before the great Exodus unfolded. And Jesus Himself lived 30 years in quiet Nazareth before beginning His public ministry. Silence is not the absence of God's action. It is the phase when He is gathering strength for an explosion of grace. When your life feels like it has entered a long pause, tell yourself, this is when God is working in the most hidden but most effective way. He is shaping the rough edges of your soul. He is purifying intentions that are not yet clean. He is preparing a mission for you that you have never imagined. His silence is a sure promise that a radiant dawn is coming. Keep the lamp of your faith burning with the oil of perseverance and the wick of unceasing prayer. Do not let silence discourage you. Let it make you thirst for God even more. That thirst itself is evidence that God is working in you, because only God can plant in a human heart a fierce longing for Himself. When we look back on our journey, we will realize that the moments when God seemed most silent were often the moments when He was closest. Like a mother watching her child learn to walk, she keeps a certain distance and stays quiet so the child can stand on their own feet. But her eyes never leave the child, and her hands are always ready to lift them up if they fall. God's silence is filled with that same motherly and fatherly love. He wants us stronger. He wants us more independent in faith. He wants us to understand that true strength does not come from outward signs, but from inward union. Learn to love this silence, because it is the safest shelter for the soul in a world overflowing with noise and falsehood. In silence, you will hear the heartbeat of God, in rhythm with your own. You will see that worries and sorrows become small before the greatness of His love. Silence does not take anything from you. It returns to you your true identity, a creature loved without conditions. Let the world spin in its restless searching, but you choose the better portion, sitting at the feet of God in reverent quiet. In the end, God's silence leads us into an understanding beyond all understanding. It is not the knowledge of books or logical arguments. It is the knowledge of direct spiritual experience. You will no longer need anyone to explain God to you, because you have met Him in your own silence. You have touched the edge of His garment in the darkness, and you have felt His warmth in the passing breeze. Silence becomes a wordless song, an unending thanksgiving. It prepares you for the final meeting, when every veil will be lifted and every silence will be replaced by the eternal vision of His holy face. Until that day, keep walking in faith and peace. See God's silence as a privilege, because not everyone has the depth to hear that silence. You have been chosen to enter the desert of the soul, where God will speak to your heart the sweetest words, words only you can understand. Treasure every moment of this stillness and let it transform your life into a song of praise to the Creator. God is never far from you. He is here, right now, in the very silence you are feeling. Smile and trust, because everything is held inside His loving plan. His silence is an endless treasure. Be brave enough to open it, and you will find your life filled with light even while the night still lingers. Let that silence be the breath of your soul, the beat of your heart, and the light that guides every step you take. Because in the end, when all the sounds of this world fade away, only the silence of God remains, and in that silence, you will realize you have come home. Look at silence as a space where God can paint the most beautiful pictures of your life, undisturbed by human opinions and prejudices. In a modern world where everything must be public and loud, God's silence is a powerful resistance. It reminds us that what is most valuable is often what cannot be seen or heard by ordinary ears. Silence is the language of true love. When two people love deeply, they do not need many words. They understand each other through a glance and through simple presence. God loves you like that. He wants you to recognize His presence not through flashy miracles, but through deep peace within the soul, even in life's storms. When you learn to welcome His silence, you will discover an extraordinary endurance. You will not be easily crushed by failure or pain, because you know that behind it all, God remains in control. His silence is a commitment that He will never allow you to be tested beyond your strength. He is shaping you like a blacksmith shapes a blade in red fire and cold water. Silence is the necessary cooling stage that makes the sword sharper and stronger. Open your heart to receive silence like a fresh stream flowing through dry ground. Do not fill it with mechanical prayers or bitter complaints. Simply be there with Him. Let His presence soak into every part of your body and every corner of your mind. In silence, the barriers between you and God begin to disappear. You will realize you were never separated from Him. You are part of His greater plan, and His silence is one way He protects you from the negative forces of the outside world. It is a strong fortress no enemy can break through. Enjoy this sacred solitude. This is when you can be most truly yourself before the Creator. No acting. No hiding weakness or failure. He knows everything, and He still chooses silence as a way to love you. His silence is a warm embrace when you fall, and an encouraging smile when you try to rise again. Trust that every silence has a reason, and God will reveal that reason at the right time, when you are ready to understand. We must also recognize that sometimes God's silence honors our maturity. He does not want us to remain children who must be led by the hand every step. He wants us to become His partners in creation and salvation. Silence is how He makes room for our creativity and compassion. When God is silent, He is giving us the chance to become His voice in the world. Instead of waiting for a voice from heaven, ask what you can do to bring hope to others. When you help the poor, comfort the suffering, or fight for justice, you are breaking the silence through your actions. God acts through us, and His silence reminds us that we carry responsibility for this world. Do not let silence make you passive. Let it push you into action with a new spirit. Let inner stillness become energy for outward love. A person who is deep in silence will often become the most effective and loving person in action. Remember the story of the prophet Elijah on Mount Horeb. God was not in the strong wind, not in the earthquake, and not in the fire, but He was present in a gentle, quiet whisper. Silence is that whisper. It requires spiritual sensitivity to recognize it. If we are too busy with the noise of life, we will miss the moment God passes by. So take time each day to enter your own silence. Turn off the devices. Step away from the crowds. Be alone with God. In those moments, you will find silence is not as frightening as you thought. It becomes a close friend. It teaches you how to love yourself and love others with a wider love. It frees you from the pressure to succeed or to be praised. You will discover that God alone is enough, and His silence is the strongest proof of that fullness. When you reach the later pages of your life, you will see that the silent moments you once resented were among the most precious. They will shine like pearls on the necklace of your story. You will thank God for being silent, because through it you found an unbreakable faith, an unwavering hope, and a deeper love. You will realize God never left you, not even for a second. He was there in sleepless nights, in quiet tears, and in the moments you felt most hopeless. His silence was His way of walking with you, hidden, but powerful. Keep going with courage and trust. Do not fear the silence of the dark night, because it is in that darkness that God's light often shines the brightest. Let your soul become a temple of stillness where God can rest, and where you can find true peace. His silence is a blessing, a calling, and a promise of an eternal future. Receive it with gratitude and humility. Because in God's silence, you do not only find answers, you find the source and the destination of your life. Rest assured, the Eternal One is faithful, and His love for you is forever, even if He chooses silence. That silence is the loudest voice of love, the clearest declaration that you are precious in His eyes. Rest in that silence and let it lead you home to everlasting peace, where there are no more tears, no more suffering, only perfect love in the radiant light of God. The journey of seeking God in silence does not end in this life, because God is infinite and His silence is a mystery that never runs dry. Each time we face it, we are invited to go deeper into His heart. This is not a boring repetition. It is the soul's continual rise. Each season of silence carries a different taste, as sometimes it is the silence of comfort, sometimes the silence of correction, and sometimes the silence of preparation for a major turning point. But in every form, God's silence is saving silence. It saves us from the superficiality of modern life. It saves us from the pride of intellect. It saves us from the loneliness of a separated ego. When we sink into His silence, we become one with humanity and with the universe. We realize we are never alone in our pain or our joy. God's silence is an invisible thread connecting all souls in one spiritual reality, the reality of pure love, where differences of language, culture, or religion become secondary before the overwhelming presence of the Most High. So stand firm. Even if the road ahead is rough and the sky seems mute, remember, a God is writing a poem with your life. Every pause is a line break that gives the poem rhythm and depth. Do not rush through it. Do not skip the silent lines. Slow down and feel the music of the quiet. You will discover that in God's silence lives every sound of life, from the morning birds to the rolling sea and the whispering wind. All of it is His language, telling you He is still here. Open your heart like a flower under the sun to receive the dew of grace that falls in the silence of the night. You will be renewed, transformed, lifted into a higher level of being. God's silence is not a burden. It is wings that help your soul rise higher in the sky of faith. Trust His guidance even when you cannot see His footprints in the sand, because in that very moment, He is carrying you in His loving arms. Let God's silence be the final and complete answer to every longing in your heart. Because in that silence, you already have everything. You lack nothing. Live a life filled with meaning, united with the one who remains silent yet loves you with a burning and eternal love. That is the final truth, and the greatest comfort for every soul journeying through this world. Be at peace, and keep hoping, because God is everything, and He is within you, right here, in this beautiful silence.